We're live.
Let's get this party
Everyone
started.
thinks because you're a zombie, you don't know good coffee. Well, they're wrong. There's only one brew that gets my seal of approval. Deadly Grounds coffee is my guilty pleasure. The aroma is so intoxicating. It brings all of my neighbors out of the woodwork. Deadly Grounds coffee. Coffee to die for and zombie approved. It's good to get a little deadly. Use the front door! Oh, they're so disgusting.
The Dorkening and all affiliated shows are not intended for anyone under the age of 18. The following may contain discussions or scenes that have adult situations, graphic violence, nudity, strong sexual content, and graphic language. This show is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Unprinted Pages, where we have Kari Leigh Sanders, J. Milton Case. I will probably still call him UncleNecRo or James, because yeah. And then we have Jodi. Hey guys. And
hey everybody. Hey Tom Dog.
Tommy.
So nice to have you here. Thank you for coming back. And how do you guys feel about the new anthology?
Love it.
Kari?
I got a message actually from Steve Van Samson at NetCon, and on one of the tables was a stack of our book next to a whole bunch of other books, and there were some missings. So that meant that some had been sold. So
Yay!
that was cool to see. It was live in the wild at a con. I'm very happy about that.
Nifty.
What about you, James?
Yes.
Well, it's my first time getting published anywhere, so I'm giddy. I'm glad it's out there. I haven't heard any feedback from anybody, so neither good nor bad. So I would presume my story was adequate. So
Mom and I loved it.
yeah. I hope
The
it
problem
gets you
is,
up in the end.
I think one of the problems is that none of us can leave reviews on it because we're all in it. So a big portion of us are like, okay, cool. I can't write anything because I'm in it. Be like, I mean,
Right.
I can post on a page, like, hey, I'm in this and all of the other people are too, and it's really cool, but I can't like post anything on Amazon like, hey, you should read this book. I helped write it, because they'll be like, no, you can't do that.
Let's see. I would probably go in and go, all the stories are great except for that one by that J. Milton Case guy. Wow, what a hack. Oh my goodness.
Don't sell yourself short.
That story was
It was
not about owls whatsoever.
I have thoughts on it, but they're all spoilers, and why I'm like, why? So yeah, but it was a great story.
Okay. I'm now morbidly curious to hear these thoughts.
And I will be getting my copy next month because I'm behind the times right now.
Jodi, were you published in anything other than fairy flying, and how are you feeling about that?
Fairy
The fairy
Fly
flying part.
was epic. Well, okay, backstory. At the time I was presented with the opportunity to be part of the self-healing book, um, it was a difficult time in my life, and then I don't know, I do this nifty little trick where I like deep dive into my own soul, and all of a sudden words were on paper and I turned it in, and voila. And I was thrilled to finally start making my dream a reality of being published.
That is awesome. And there's one thing that a thread that pulls all of you together as writers, the love of music. But each of you, all of you guys love some of the same music and there's some different. My first question is, how does your love of music play into your writing? Let's start with Jodi.
So, my whole life, I was born into a musical family. So I've always known music, of all kinds. My grandparents they had their own bluegrass band. They were the Ramblin' Banjos. And I remember, obviously at 2, you can't read or write, but Granddad used to always wear this rooster hat. He was crazy. And he heard me before one of their shows belting it out to Coal Miner's Daughter. And he just walked me up to the front of the stage and said, "Here you go." And it started playing, and the rest was history. How it ties into my writing is I am not a picky genre person of music. I enjoy all music. I do believe in the fact that it is universal. So if it touches my soul, it's for me. And for whatever reason, when I feel it, it's easier for me to be more creative. And a lot of the music I listen to, it has to definitely mean something to me that's relatable. And so it's part of my self-healing journey, which is exactly why I write.
That is awesome. And this one I've been curious about with James, definitely after that wonderful story about his journey through music on the Allied Society show. Please tell us, James.
Well, as far as music goes, yeah, my family, my mom and dad both were into music as I was growing up. My dad would listen to what I would call 70s AM gold, but back then it was actually the 1970s, so it was just the AM radio. So a lot of, what we now call yacht rock and the soft rock and all that fun stuff. And my mom was she was into like Elvis Presley and all the 50s stuff that she grew up on, some of the 60s, which influenced me at a very, very young age. But as I mentioned in that particular podcast episode, I got my first radio when I was 9, and we were living in Pacific Beach, Washington at the time when it was still a naval base. And I tuned it in and discovered AOR radio, album-oriented rock radio. That's what it means. And, the first song that I heard was Shame on the Moon by Bob Seger. And at the age of 9, the sounds that were coming out and the mournfulness, it gave me feelings that profoundly affected me in a way that nothing else really could. Growing up also, I had a very, very overactive imagination. I've been reading since I can remember, simply because my entire family were readers, especially my mom, my dad, and my grandpa, my maternal grandfather, were really voracious readers, and I don't know. I always associated when I started associating a lot of the stories that I would make up in my head with what the music would make me feel. Am I getting a little too deep here for a simple question?
No.
I don't know, because one of the first songs that I remember hearing besides Bob Seger was I was just thinking about this just a few hours ago was the song "Maneater" by Hall & Oates, which, Hall & Oates, you're thinking, ooh, okay, soft rock from the 80s. No, that song has such the eerie bass line and the scariest like saxophone. Like, it's haunting. And if you're alone in the woods at night and you hear that sax, you will poop yourself. I am, very much. And the song, I also first heard the song "Hungry Like the Wolf" by Duran Duran, which, when you're 9, I'm thinking werewolves. This is a guy who turns into a werewolf and chases people. Obviously, that's not what the song is really about. But when you're 9, and that's "Hungry Like the Wolf," and the sinisterness of the pop song itself, it got under my skin. And you may see that, given my shirt and a lot of the shirts that I wear, I kind of graduated from just rock music on up. It was a gradual incline, if you will. The band Wham was my first gateway introduction into metal, and by that I mean my Uncle Jerry heard me listening to them, and then gave me his old AC/DC and Ted Nugent tapes to listen to, and that kind of led into hard rock. I first heard the opening power chords to "Highway to Hell," and even at the age of 11, I think that kick-started puberty a little too early in me at the time. I suddenly grew this magnificent beard, and my testes dropped, and I went, "Mother, something has changed. I do not know what. I also wish for a guitar." But yeah, it's when Kari and I met in junior high, I was this is around the time when air metal was just starting to gain prominence on the radio. It was my time to shine, gradually going up to Motley Crue, Dokken, that fun stuff. And then I discovered Metallica, and that blew me away. And then from there, in the early 90s, all the alternative metal that was coming out, like Faith No More, White Zombie, all that fun stuff. And the grunge, we were just talking about Alice in Chains earlier before the show started. And a lot of that is great, brilliant. I always looked at that as just really great hard rock, and not just, this is grunge, this is what's new now, and I must be listening to this now. No, I incorporated everything that I liked. I had no idea that metalheads did not congregate with punks. I just listened to punk rock if I liked it, and metal. It was all great music to me. How this affects my writing, mind you, a lot of that does have to do with the fact that many people consider metal and especially metalheads to be scary, but there's a lot more depth and resonance with us that plays a lot into the horror and darker fiction that I started getting into also around, junior high, like with Stephen King and everything. How it affects my writing. Anybody who has read the story that I have knows that I have a certain sense of humor injected into the story. It's not just all grim. There's a little my cousin once put it best when I had her read one of my stories. That got dark really quick, and That's, you know, lure them in with a little lightheartedness, and then boom, scary. It's almost like a great episode of Supernatural. In that there are things that, you know, you can laugh at and identify with, but I'm not afraid to bring out the monsters. So that's what the music tends to do. It's great. There's some goofiness to a lot of it, but it's not afraid to take a direct look at the monsters that are out there. So I hope that made sense.
Mhm.
Everybody's kind of silent.
I've enjoyed it. If you didn't notice, I was
Just letting
smiling
you
through most
speak.
of it because I got a better look.
Oh yeah, I'm a better writer than I am off the cuff talking. So
I was just thinking, like, that's so, the way you described it, so relatable on how you get into going from one thing, you know, like music, writing, they do go, you know, like this and the way you did it. And I'm like, you know, mine's a different aspect, obviously, but I'm like, yeah.
Well, you can see how it goes into your poetry.
Mm.
yeah,
Oh, by the way, hi, Stefan.
Hi,
Okay,
Stefan.
what about you, Carrie?
Okay. First of all, I want to go back on something that James had mentioned, which was saxophones. And for me, the saxophone that will always be in my head when I think rock and roll and I think saxophones is Alto Reed's solo in Bob Seger's Turn the Page. That's
Oh, yeah.
just one, like, we all know that one. You know?
Mhm.
And I got to see him live, you know, with my mom. So that was very cool. And he was rocking. And Alto would get out there and he still got the hair and everything going on. And he'd go from one side of the stage to the other to do his solos. And Bob was just ruling and doing his thing. And he's older, but man, he still kept his stage presence the whole time through the whole show and straight up delivered. That man is amazing. So Bob Seger was an inspiration, truly, to those of us in Nebraska about our age. He was somebody that you're just like, wow. And with the combination of different types of music, they called us Hessians, or we called us Hessians. We've discovered it's more of a Midwestern thing. But if you were into, like, if you wore flannels and listened to metal music and maybe grunge, or other kinds of rock and stuff, it all just kind of combined into one culture that we all got along pretty well, and we were all Hessians, you know. So that's that. But when it comes to my writing, I don't use music that much in it. I use music when I'm not writing because I can't write and listen at the same time. I used to be able to, but I can't do it. If I don't know the words, I can do it. So sometimes, like, my first published story was The Weird Voyage, and I would listen to Wardruna because they are Norwegian, and it's Norwegian folk music, and that was part of what the whole story was based around. So that's something that I can zone out on and think of, and it gets me in that right frame of mind. But I do have a book that I'm working on, and it's a muse style of story that has songs in it that I'm writing because my dear friend Greg Loftus had agreed to do this book with me, and I was going to write the book and he was going to record the album. And unfortunately, he passed a couple of years, well, no, last year. And so that's kind of on hold right now, but it's very sad because the book was partially inspired by him and partially inspired by all of the musicians that I really grew up loving that we've lost to, like, drugs and things like that. And the muse is like a very toxic person that comes into his life and drags him away from everything. And it's supposed to kind of get this representation of addiction combined with stuff, keep pushing people away to do all of that. And all the songs are kind of more about cravings, but it's written like they're towards a woman, but I don't know. So that's one way that I do use music for stuff, is a specific book dedicated to music. But otherwise, music is my break. Like, okay, I've done all this stuff. I need to sit down. I need to think. So I'm going to, depending on I need to be inspired. I need to get pumped up. I'm going to listen to Disturbed's 10,000 Fists. I need to mellow out. I have a playlist that's a bunch of grunge and stuff, ballads kind of things. It's my happy song, as James knows, is the Gord's version of Gin and Juice by Snoop Dogg, which I highly recommend you all listen to. It will make you happy. It is a bluegrass version of Gin and Juice. You can find it on YouTube. And yeah, but it's always like I can have any character if I want to play an instrument, because along with Jodi, my grandfather played the fiddle and guitar. My grandmother played guitar, I believe. My mom could play guitar. My uncle was in a band he was inducted in the Nebraska Hall of Fame after 50 years of playing in bands and stuff a couple of years ago. And like this past weekend, actually. And then kiddo plays bass. My nephew plays everything. And so I just have a family that we went to see them play a lot. So I grew up. It was another one of those things where I grew up thinking everybody knew this music, but they don't. There are certain songs that I'm just like, surely everyone has heard of Mac the Knife. Apparently not. Surely everyone knows Boogie in the Barnyard. Oh no, there's been I can find one recording of it on YouTube that was made by some band back in the 40s or something, and it was like, okay, I guess I'm standing alone in a lot of this, and I wonder where in the hell they got it, because they were singing it when they had no internet to try to find these obscure songs on, But so that's what it really does for me. It gives me the relaxation, but the songwriting that I do, I try to not base it off of any particular band. I used to write I used to write songs for Greg way back when we were just kind of out of high school. He was a year below me. But so I'll probably include those in the book. But yeah. That's what music does for me. It lets me relax and get out of things, but I think it changes the pace that people write into. Oh, I love doing parodies. Parodies are so much fun. And that's something, yeah. If I hear something and it gets caught in my head and I get a little bit of oh, this can go with this, then I have a bunch of them on files saved on my lap. We're waiting to do parody songs. I have parody songs that are going to require 4 of us to sing them. And so I'm like, okay, we must get together and practice now. So yeah,
so much fun.
Yeah, I guess I don't think of those so much as writing as they're just little doot in my head, and half the time they're on the spot, so it's just and oh, I did a thing. Okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Kari in that I can't really listen to music while I'm writing, but what I like to do is to throw it on and let my mind wander, where, see where the melody takes me or something, or just, if I really need, it's really more therapeutic at this point. But it has influenced. It's given me a lot of inspiration on if I'm stuck on a scene, how does this work out? What is this going to do? And I just throw on the medals, pull up my copy of Solitaire on the computer, and just let my mind wander while I'm doing all of this. And it helps out a lot. It
I
really
was
does.
going to go off of something you said, James, too. When you said, like, certain things sounded eerie to you when you were like 9. So I remember being 7. And the first time I heard Nights in White Satin and The Build by Moody Blues, it shook me to my core, but I absolutely love it today. But it's just that subtle eeriness in The Build, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. I think I got something like that when I first heard "Witchy Woman" by the Eagles.
Yeah.
And again, at 9, you're thinking, "Oh wow, there's you expect a witch to fly by."
I wondered about that whenever I was little. If she was going to come out of the random alleyway of Athens, Georgia, and say something or fly by.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What?
I have to look something up. Whiter Shade of Pale was the one that did that for me.
Ah.
Okay.
That's a good one, though.
That and being young and listening to the Hotel California, I was always rooting for the hotel. I'm like, yes, it's keeping them all there.
So
I had to look that up. I'm like, Proclair.
My next question is, how does your writing help your mental health? Let's start with James, because I haven't started with him yet.
Okay. It makes the voices stop.
That's nice.
Because sometimes, okay, so I'm not going to say what I have, but I was diagnosed with it when I was 12. I was kind of struggling with it when I was 9, but it wasn't fully diagnosed till I was 12. Because of mass media, it's kind of become a laughingstock when it's not. But let's just say that one of the side effects of this thing that I have results in my brain randomly choosing to go back and picking something that happened to me, maybe even small and innocuous, but bring it back up and say, hey, remember this? And then going through every single scenario where I could have done something differently and then playing it out to see how that would have done. And there would be thousands. It takes me so long to make my brain shut up so I can actually go to sleep. And this has actually helped a lot with the writing, and the writing has helped a lot with dealing with that kind of thing instead of just sitting there going, this over, kind of like Doctor Strange in near the end of the Infinity War, where he's just sitting there and his head was just, it was like that. Some would say I'm twitchy, but not. I didn't figure this out until long after I left high school. And when you're saddled with this and not knowing what it is and trying to figure out how to deal with it in a high school setting or even junior high setting, I wish I knew how to do that. Yes. Yes, the multiverse. So.
Okay. What about you, Mel?
Oh, sorry.
Please continue, James.
Well, I was just going to add that it did doing that whole, brain existing, the multiverse thing, that did inform a lot of, inspire a lot of what turned out to be the story that I put into the anthology. So if you're curious about that, you'll have to buy the anthology and read it.
Please do.
Do it.
I think we all did.
You'll enjoy it.
I know they did a great job. I saw ways that I could have done better, and I did work hard on it, but that's neither here nor there. What about you, you Carrie?
Okay, so writing, yes, helps me go to sleep at night because I I have the same not the same diagnosis, but a similar issue to James, where it's like, hey, Carrie, remember that time, like laying down, hey Carrie, you remember that time in like fourth grade when you wore your pants backwards to school and they noticed because you had to stand up in front of the class for something, and then you asked to go to the bathroom and Mrs. Baum said, not if you're going there just to change your pants. And you were like, but yeah, that kind of sucked. And like, so that happened. Remember that? Wasn't that humiliating? Wasn't that terrible? Didn't you hate that? And then I would lay there and be like, oh, what else happened in elementary school? And a lot of that's a fog for me. Thankfully, I had a head injury and knocked out most of it. But, you know, all these other like little tiny things that would just get under my skin and just, you know, would keep me awake. And so now I have like, okay, focus on story writing, because if I can focus hard enough, I can start dreaming the story if I work my mojo the way that it's supposed to. So then I can have more of the story fleshed out when I wake up because I will have dreamt it. So I spend a lot of my time getting to sleep by, if I'm not listening to something to put me to sleep, or sometimes I'll even listen to it and just blank it out while I think of my own stories. But it helps me sleep. I have to read a lot. So it is also a strain on my mental health because I won't get enough stuff written. And I'll be like, I have 5 works in progress that have deadlines right now. And I should be writing them. But instead I went to Reddit and I just wrote a couple pages of Harry Potter fanfic because there was a prompt. Didn't do anything for my story, you know, but at least I got some words out. So that was good. I don't know. But I overstress it and then I'll try to write out the bare bones. But I have problems not writing something until it's fully fleshed out. It's hard for me to put out a basic outline and stuff. A character does not exist until they have the right name, and because then they become more of a person and they can then tell me what they're doing, because my characters tell me what they're doing. I don't, like, I have a basic, okay, we're going from point A to point B, how are we getting there along the way? You let me know how you want to do it, and then I write it out for them. So I have to fully flesh everybody out. But yeah, deadlines are a major stressor for me, and so I don't know. But it helps me sleep, so that's the good part. And when I finish something, if I'm proud of it, I'm that puts me in an elation mode. If I just like, when I write a really good paragraph or just even a sentence, it's just like that when you hit the perfect note when you're singing or playing an instrument and you just nailed it and you have that extra special feeling inside. Those are the moments in writing that I really like. And it's not going to be every sentence in a story, but it's going to be those couple things that show up here or there that it's like, okay, that's definitely my flavor. That's my voice. That's there. And I'm proud of it. So I kind of went all over the place, but that's how it deals with my mental health.
At some point, I want at least one story with how you travel in your dreams to someplace with that in it.
I actually have stuff started, but yeah, I spent a couple weeks. I dream, for those of you who don't know, I dream a lot, and it's like on crack or something. My mom says that I dream on steroids because I can remember so detailed of stuff and I can get back into the same dreams. And I have this really elaborate couple of dreamscapes that all have like certain types of transportation that you have to use in them, different laws of the universe that work only in each one. And you have to obey those laws of the universe to get through. Like, I can breathe water in this version of things. I can do this in this version of things. I have to take a train if I want to get from Hooper to Scribner. But, you know, but I was reading a book in my dreams and I kept I kept losing the book, so I had to focus. So then I sat through and I kept dreaming that this book was showing up, but I could never finish it. So I focused my brain, got through, and ended up reading it. And it was a trilogy, and I got through all of them in my sleep, but I had to work on it a little bit. But that's what I can do with my dreaming, is hardwire it that I can also read internal monologues going on from the NPCs in my dreams sometimes, so I can find out the motivation behind the bad guy or whatever. It's just, that's how my brain functions. It is damaged. That might have part of the reason that I have all this access to stuff, because my neurologist says I'm fine. It's just something that a very small percentage of people can do. So
That is wow. Still wow.
Ooh. Ask
I
girl
think it's
all
so
over there.
I think it's so cool you can do that, like tap into your lucid dreams and like do all that and then revisit them. That is like, wow.
Yeah, apparently this is only a thing that only Nebraskans can do, so it just
Maybe I
astounds
need
me
to
that
move
nobody
there.
else can. Yeah, well,
It's in the corn.
I'll tell one story about
Right.
your dream too. Okay. Jodi, what about writing and your mental health?
Okay, so trying to think of how, like, I don't disclose what my illness is. But it does cause me to be very eccentric. And I had learned this nifty little trick due to my past upbringing and the trauma beyond my control. But I owned everything at the time, like everything was my fault, always. If it went bad, it didn't matter where I was. Somebody could drop groceries in the grocery store, and oh, I must have made that happen. So I had this nifty little trick where I could automatically dissociate to get out of my head. But then words got hard, very hard, like communication, everything. It was very hard for me because I just kept turning everything off. And this foster home I was in, anyway, they were like, we need to go get her to someone that can help her open up more, because I would just stare at the ground. I wouldn't look you in the eye. Like I wanted nothing to do with nothing. And so they just had me start writing what was going. I didn't have to talk, so that was the plus at the time. But write what's coming into my head. And so, first, I mean, as a kid, it's little words, right? You don't really know how to express yourself fully, but it kept building. And the more I started communicating and learning how to just quit shutting myself off from everything, and that even if it's painful, it's okay to welcome it, because I learned it's better to deal with it than to keep shoving it down. So that's when I started realizing more about myself and what I like to call the creative side of my brain. And that I can take my pain and turn it into something beautiful. You know what I mean? Trying not to get emotional, relatable, that people could be like, oh my God, I'm not alone. Oh my God. Like, because we have thoughts, others have the same thoughts. And what had started happening, to pick up on Dell with the sleep thing, and I started writing more at night, is because from the pain of my trauma, I was very bad into self-degrading. Like I owned everything and none of it was me, But of course, you have to grow to learn that. And so when I'd go to bed, or we should say try, all these bad thoughts that I would say to myself, just kind of resonated there. And then I'd be like, oh, but she said if I got up and put them on paper, maybe that'll release them. And I learned that even if it's something I'm not comfortable telling another soul, if I write it, I can let it go. So that's kind of how it all started tying in with my mental health. And it's a healing thing for me, though I love to share it with others because I know I'm not the only one. You know, it's healing for me, and that's why I do it.
That Tosker's trying to give you a hug, but he can't get down there. It's like,
Hug. My cat keeps trying to jump in the camera and say hi. So yes, hugs. Everyone, group hug.
Yes. Up to all three of you. And it's for the kitty.
Oh, Ryan.
and salute.
Right.
And booze. Don't forget the booze.
Oh, the kitty.
Oh, kitty. Kitty.
So cute and
Orion.
adorable.
Is it true that the orange kitties are usually the most psycho?
Yes. Yes. He is not of this planet. That's why he's named after Orion's belt. And that should be self-explanatory.
This box right here is Hinata. She's always in our shows now.
Oh.
It's not
And
ever
I'm so
gonna
sorry
stop
about
being-
that, Del.
Thank you. She was my best kidders. So since she liked to be on the show and I can't just keep her sitting here because she might get knocked over, which I guess that sounds weird to say. I keep her over here. Don't want to drop the
Well,
cat.
she would get
The ghost of Hinata would be knocking herself off.
True.
Beep.
Guess what, Mom? Bonk.
My beautiful peoples, which author made you want to write more? Jodi.
Okay. So everybody knows him. Okay, so before I even say his name, I'm gonna name the book because I read the book before I ever saw the film. Cujo scared the living hell out of me, and I was afraid of any dog that even resembled Cujo. But then my uncle was a big fan, and being so much older because he was in the Navy and that was his enjoyment, you know, when they were off doing their things. And he just kind of handed them down, and he just became my life. And like Christine drew me in big time. I love Stephen King, and that was my inspiration. As far as poetry, which in school I used to get a lot of criticism for because not a lot of people in my, I don't want to say genre, but you know, like as far as, you know, 80s middle school, but they didn't get Poe. I loved Poe. Truly. And I'm like, if I could be anything like them, that would be that would fulfill my life.
That would be cool.
Mhm.
Okay. Kari.
Okay, I started reading like the Chronicles of Narnia by myself when I was 5. I was doing Tolkien when I was 8. That was also when we experimented with Shakespeare. Between that time, I was also reading, I think it was Susan Cooper and Madeline L'Engle and some others. And they made me really want to be readers. And I liked to write, but I wasn't so much like, I want to write these stories because I always wanted to have something of my own. But I liked watching like the Universal Monsters horror movies. And so those were kind of inspiring. And then when I first read Ray Bradbury, that was when I was like, I need to write. I absolutely need to write. And it's nothing against Tolkien or C.S. Lewis. I still love my fantasy collection, but it was getting into like some of the sci-fi and the darker themes that really inspired me to want to get writing. And then, it Clive Barker, wow, um, Neil Gaiman. When I started reading comic books and stuff, and then read his actual stuff, that was huge. Terry Pratchett, big inspiration on some of the voice styles on things because he's so clever in the way that he puts some stuff and the way that he leads around. And there's just certain things that like you learn things when you read his books, whether you want to or not. He makes sure that you do. And so those were all inspiring for me, but it had to be Ray Bradbury that got me started on wanting to actually put pen to paper and produce something. And then everybody else just influenced me more and more towards what I wanted to. And then H.P. Lovecraft, of course, and finding this entire universe that all these people share and stuff. That was just like icing on the cake of being like, you mean I can write about this guy too, and it's okay? Holy shit. That's awesome. And so I was like just devouring all of that, and that's what got me writing.
That is so cool. What about you, James?
Well, I'm kind of right with Kari when she said that she was a reader first, which is very important to the writing process. As I mentioned before, I've been reading since I can remember. Some of the books that really got me interested in the reading were I had an old dog-eared copy. It was bought new, but soon it was dog-eared, and it was Roald Dahl's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And then I read the Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator. Not too many people know about the sequel to the book. And I remember this was back in 1983 when I got the original Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And I remember this wasn't in the movie, but the book seems to be better, really better, a lot darker, but which is saying something. But I also got into the Choose Your Own Adventure books that started coming out around this time too.
Mm-hmm.
And for Christmas, I got one of those box sets with the first 5 books in the series. And my favorite ones were like the Haunted Cabin or whatever it was, the very first one, because it was a haunted cabin, and also the Space Adventures. I was kind of okay with the Cave of Time thing, but it was a haunted house and adventures in space. Those are my 2 big things. But what got me into wanting to write, it would be, I'm with Jodi in that it was Stephen King for me. First, I heard about Stephen King's writings from my junior high teacher, which Kari and I shared. He would like describe the books to us, and I would go, "This is mind blowing. I must come across this person that he speaks of." But then I came across my mom's old stash of Stephen King books, and she only had 3 of them. One was Cujo, one was Different Seasons, and the other was the Night Shift collection of short stories. They were all 3 of them were mass market paperback size, But I chose Cujo as my first one and used that as the premise for the book report that the aforementioned teacher assigned us to give. So I read that, and it wasn't even a supernatural horror. It was something that could have happened, especially living on a farm here, knowing that rabies is a thing, and you could be terrified by nature and all that. But it fascinated me. It didn't necessarily scare me, but it kept me just. I went through that in just a few days, where everybody else, a lot of my classmates were going, I would definitely take over a year to read something like that. And that wasn't even like Stephen King's most voluminous novel
Right.
ever. Right. Because I remember, yeah. I mean, I went on to read the uncut version of The Stand in 1990 and carrying that around at school. It was the hardcover edition. So, yeah, don't drop it on your foot.
Paperweight.
But just, I am what you would call a constant reader, what he calls his fans. And it was him, and later on when I graduated to Clive Barker and various other horror writers, and started basically the looking into older classic stuff, like the romantic era from the 1800s on, first reading Dracula and Frankenstein, and plus a lot of the more obscure ones that you can now get for $1, collected in 500 stories on Kindle, which is amazing. But Kari, you had a comment about The Stand there?
Oh, I just when I was living in the loft down in Lincoln on O Street and worked at the Rococo, one of my roommates and coworkers was reading The Stand, and he would take it into work, and he was working just the ticket booth because it's when we were open full time, and there would be like movies and stuff and concerts, so somebody always had to be running the ticket booth. And so he'd have this book in front of him, but you can just beat somebody to death with The Stand if you wanted to. You can wear Stephen King around like body armor. It's like, is this written by Stephen King or a Russian author? You decide.
The answer is yes. But yeah,
but I could never believe that people don't read that much, or how hard.
Yeah. I mean, I always got made fun of it in high school, which I thought, great, it was just high school. These are just students. Now, even now, like I go to a bar and I'd bring a book and somebody inevitably will come up and go, what are you reading for? Are you bored? I can entertain you. And I'd have to, stab them with a spoon, make them go away.
Right.
I got challenged because they didn't think that I was reading, that I could actually read at the rate that I was reading in high school. And somebody sent me home with John Saul's Suffer the Children.
Mm.
And I read that and another book that night. And went back the next day, and they were like, so what was it about? And I told them. They're like, you just skim read it. I'm like, no, I read the entire thing and started discussing all the different parts about it and stuff. And they just like didn't. I mean, it basically took my stepsister being like, dude, I live with her. It's all she does. She has no life. She works and she reads, and that's it.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, our dear fair watchers of this fine podcast of ours, if you didn't know but about this, I will let you know now. Kari Leigh Sanders reads entire libraries.
I did read the entire library at our school in less than a year because it was very small. And I also, growing up in Hooper, we had the smallest public library in the nation, which has since expanded. And I did not read everything in that because I couldn't get into the Hardy Boys, and there were a couple of other things that were just like, but I read all the horror. I read all the good stuff that they had in the library. That wasn't like, I don't know. And I'm not insulting people's taste, but keep in mind I was a kid, so romance was kind of like, I don't give a shit, I don't need to be, there was like the housewives section, and it was just like, no, I don't need the Harlequin. I can go back and read Creepshow again.
Where are the pages stuck together? I don't know.
I knew where all the I could find things by Dewey Decimal. I used to have them memorized when I'd go into the Fremont Public Library, and they had a cool area with a fountain that had little kids in it, and the lights would change colors as the water came up, so you could get your book. And if it was really hot out, it was always cool to sit by the fountain, and you could just sit there and read. So when it was Dad's weekend to have us, we'd be in Fremont, and I would just get dropped off at the library for a couple of hours, and it was my happy time. So yeah.
When we were younger, my sister would get aggravated when people would interrupt her in class or at the lunch table, and she has literally looked at somebody, held up her spoon. If you do not leave me alone, I will take your heart out with my plastic spoon. So yeah, Jodi, you had a comment?
You're muted.
You're on mute.
Sorry, that's because I was typing. So right about the time like when the Nook came out and everything, and everybody was switching to that, but Jodi liked to have the hard bound smell of the pages, tangible, they're all like, God, you're such a nerd. Why do you you can just get one of these? And I'm like, you have no idea what it's like to be a true reader. There's nothing like flipping the pages and smelling everything as you're reading it. And then I've got some books, they're wrapped and actually, because they were my rereads, so to say, where the spines of them are just falling apart because I read them that many times.
Right.
And nothing against using like Kindle and all that. Trust, nothing against that. I would just rather hold a real book.
Also, if you drop a book down a flight of stairs, you can just pick it up and take off where you've left off and not have to buy another one.
Correct.
For $100 some odd dollars. You will never hear somebody with an actual book say things like, my book ran out of batteries, I have to recharge it.
Right.
I mean, I have a Kindle.
True.
They do come in handy, but that is a point of contention for me. It's just, it seems the battery is just lousy on those things. Mm-hmm. And I'm just getting into something and suddenly we're down to 20%. I'm like, son of a fuck.
I do both. I have a ridiculously large book collection, according to my mom. Like, you should know more than like 20 or something. I'm like, that's like a shelf. I have multiple bookshelves, all layer books, layer books, layer books. That's one shelf. Then boxes of books, then stacks of books, then books everywhere. And so now I buy them cheaper on the Kindle, particularly if I need to see if it's an author that I'm going to like. And or if it is somebody that I know I'm going to like Stephen Sampson, Curtis M. Lawson, whenever they do the big releases and stuff, I will buy their special book that's like lettered or numbered and signed, and then buy the Kindle version to read. So I like get the nice, awesome book, and I like take it, I take pictures of it, I give it a smell, I give it a hug, I bubble wrap it back up and put it in a safe place, because I don't have any glass covered bookcases yet, and I'm a smoker, and I don't want to ruin all these like gorgeous editions of things I have. But that's why I use the Kindle now, is so that I can like afford to buy the really nice first editions and then read whatever I want to. So I'm reducing the amount of books that I have, but I can't get over it. I mean, like, I'm looking and I probably have, what would you say, James, about 600 books in my cases right now?
Give or take. It's always an amazing thing to go over there and go, oh, the bookshelf.
Yeah, and then there's one around the corner. But
Right.
I think I would be willing to get rid of maybe 10 of them. Like, there are a couple things where it was like somebody bought me books and it was like, that's okay. I'm not really into it, you know. But yeah, everything else, like the Discworld series, I read that like born agains read the Bible. I mean, I could cite chapter and verse if he actually had chapters in the books of like I have all these quotes. It used to be like almost anybody would say anything, and I'd be like, okay, and in the Discworld, this quote by so and so, and I would like have them all typed out, and people are just like, there is round world that we exist on. Earth is where you live. You don't have to shut up. I'll come up with a Harry Potter quote if you don't.
Begrudgingly, you live there.
Yes, I don't live here on purpose, but I do what I can.
All just come visit your library, Kari.
Well, I need to make it a little bit bigger because then we could achieve L space. And which, if you're familiar with the Discworld, all libraries are connected because knowledge equals power and matter and stuff all combines. And so you can like all libraries in the universe or in the multiverse are connected. So you can get from one place to another just by going through old bookstores and libraries.
That would be wicked.
Look it up. It's great.
Yeah.
I would love to. Yes, people, we are the type of people to find old books. 1911 original story, published 1986, with pictures. Whole reason I got it, it literally had my name in it, and I've loved this story since I was a kid. That is the type of book collectors we are.
Well, and not
That is a
only
wonderful
that,
book.
I steal from Jenny's Kindle list all the time. It's like in our life, we could live 1,000 lifetimes and we never read everything she's got in that thing.
12,297 last count.
Wow.
And still adding.
Still adding every day, sometimes up to 7 books. But either way, back to the actual interview. Which author is the automatic, you wrote it, I'm going to buy it, period, because you wrote it. Jinx.
Right now, as far as go-to authors that you write it, I'm a buy it, I'm going to have to say Joe Hill. Simply because the guy's amazing. He has carved a name for himself outside of his father's shadow. If you didn't know, Joe Hill is the son of Stephen King. But like when the books Nosferatu and The Firemen came out, I just bought them the day they were released. I didn't wait for it to go on discount. I slapped in a B for Boogie to the nearest bookstore and just bought it right off the display table. And I was not disappointed whatsoever for any of them. But the very first book that I read from him was Heart-Shaped Box, and that blew my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, I discovered he was Stephen King's son. But at that point, he was a very distinctive voice outside of, comparisons to his father. Because books like Horns and the numerous short story collections that he has, I haven't really read any of his comic books, the Lock and Key series. But if I come across it, I won't be saying no. But yeah, Joe Hill is an amazing talent. And will automatically, something new, I'm a buy it. So.
I haven't heard that phrase in such a long time. Slapped in B for Boogie and went.
Well.
I'm calling me old in this part. So yeah. But anyway, Jodi.
So for me right now, well, me and Jenny have discussed this. So there's 2, and if they write it because I love the way they write, I'm just gonna go buy it. Of course, always Stephen King. That's my number 1. But Diana Gabaldon, who does The Outlander, because if you read the books and not just people who focus on the show, like I can envision the scene, and like her writing is just beautifully written. And then because now they've come out with House of the Dragon, and I had not been able to get the last book, which was the Battle of Dragons, which was Fire and Blood, because that's the Battle of Dragons. I finally got my hands on it, and once again, George R.R. Martin blew my freaking mind as far as the way he ties all that together. So if he writes it, which he's almost finally, after all these years, finished with The Winds of Winter, yeah, that's good. I'm not waiting for a sale. I'm not passing go and collecting $200. We are just grabbing the book. Period.
What about you, Kari?
Okay, the first one that I'm going to go with, I have 5 actually. But yeah, and this is books, not comic books. But the first one was Terry Pratchett. As he's no longer with us, it's simply a matter of finishing up getting the really obscure stuff like the cookbook and things like that are what I need to finish my complete Terry Pratchett collection. I've been trying to build up the library collection. They have special books for that. But they're kind of expensive, so I'm trying to do my budget. The 2 living authors that most people will know are Clive Barker and Neil Gaiman. And then the people that you guys might not know, but if you watch our shows, you know, and the people that I'm so excited that I got to know and have been published with are Steve Van Samson. Well, I guess I'm 6. There's Steve Van Samson and Curtis M. Lawson, both of which are fantastic. And then also from our show, Rob Smales. He's been on a lot of times too. And those 3 are they're authors that I might not have gotten to know if I hadn't been published with some of them and then gotten to see, like, okay, Curtis works a lot with Weird House Press, and that's where some of Rob's stuff is out. Steve and Derek Rook do Rough House Publishing, and that's where they do amazing giveaways with their books. Like, you do a book and you get, if you spend the premium edition, I mean, I got hot sauce in one of them. You get cards and posters and all this stuff. And it's not just that, it's the stories are great. And those guys, all 3 of them are just amazing. And I'm so glad that I was exposed to them. And I think they're going places, you know, like I really see these guys being up there soon. So if you have not read them, I encourage you to go out and read those guys. I'm pretty sure most of you already know Gaiman and Barker. You know, I mean, buy them too, because they're amazing. But if you want exposure to some great horror, and Rob's is a little bit slightly on the more humorous side of things. Steve is one of the best monster writers that I've ever read. And Curtis has this ability to draw you into a void or have an unness, something wanting to become, is something that's a very strong talent. It's not his only talent. And actually, both he and Steve also have kind of a bit of a musical influence in their writing as well. They're both musicians, so it's not surprising. But it's something that he does better than almost anybody else that I've ever read who writes about something trying to become. Like, he's just fabulous at it. So those are my 6 that I have to buy. This is why I'm going to be homeless soon, because I'm just buying books. And yeah.
James, you said you had more to add.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that we could do multiple. So, yeah, I would have to say that to add to this, the Jim Butcher's material, especially the, and of course my mind decides to go blank, but the Dresden Files. Now, you know, I've read all of them simply because a friend of mine said, you must read this series. And at the time, he gave me all 15 of the books that were out in that series, and I read them within the time span of about 4 or 5 months. And now when a new one comes out, I pretty much buy it on the spot, usually on Kindle now. And it's almost like popping Pez candy for me. Like, boom, boom, oh, I'm done. That is it could be like 600 pages and oh, dude, I should read slower. But also what Kari said, that Curtis M. Lawson is really, really good at finding that sweet spot where horror and mind-bending fantasy combine, and as she put it, drawing you into the void. Basically, it's like if Clive Barker and Neil Gaiman had a love child, and it was raised by Aleister Crowley. So, yeah, I recently, and by recently a couple of months ago, but his couch surfing through the 12 levels of hell.
That was beautiful.
That novella, it's just, and he's, if he doesn't make it, if he doesn't explode as an author, then life is meaningless. Yeah, get his stuff. It is available. Everything is available on Amazon or wherever you buy it. And it was the Blackheart's Boys Choir that Kari and I first interviewed him. I remember those were my first time reading the guy, and I'm like, this is not going anywhere I was expecting at all. Is this actually happening? Is the narrator insane? He's obviously an unreliable narrator, but what's going on? Why is this happening? Why is it I'm cold stone sober, yet feel like I'm starting to trip balls here? That kind of effect.
And he wrote that like as musical movements. If you read, if you listen to some of the interviews with him, it highly involves music. And I have like 3 or 4 hard copies of it because there were different editions that came out, some with illustrations, some with color illustrations. A lot of them I got signed. And I also have it on the Audible book. And the way it's read, there's like the main voice going through, and he does the other voices, But then when you go into Lucien's head, because there's parts where the narrator just goes off and is like imagining things or fantasizing about things, and you'll get this echo effect as he's talking about that stuff, and a bit of violin music in the background, and then there'll be like little bits here and there of music that just pop in as you're listening to it. So I've never heard an audiobook recorded that way before. So that's just beautiful in its own right. It's a different experience even than reading the book. You're just like,
you must understand. Well, as I was reading this is one of the rare books that I was reading, and then when it ended, I kind of got pissed off because it was more like, oh, it's done. I can't continue reading this book from this point. Son of a bitch. So,
but that one you can actually get for free if you go to his website and subscribe to his newsletter. I believe it's still up there that you can get an e-copy of it for free, and you should do that. Curtis with a C M Lawson.
Yes.
We're like plugging the shit out of Curtis because he is amazing.
Yeah.
I can't find a reason to have a problem with that. Do you remember the first time you were reading a book and you just got to the end and were like, it's over? What? Why is it over?
And you even see it coming because it's getting thinner at the end here, but all of a sudden it's gone. What happened? Where do we go from here?
What was the first book for you?
What was the first book for me?
Yeah, I'm going to go around, but let's start with you.
Okay. Well, seeing as how I just volunteered myself for this question, wow, that is a good question. I would have to say, really? Wow. Nice. I would have to go with The Dark Half by Stephen King. Simply, it was one of his post post rehab books, if you will, where most of the 80s he was kind of drugged up to the hilt. He has come out and said he doesn't remember writing most of Cujo, but then his family did an intervention. He got clean, and I believe The Dark Half was the first one he wrote after the rehab, if I remember correctly. But I read that thing in 7 hours. This is one of my. It was in high school, and my stepfather would always get pissed off because I would stay up reading into all the hours, forgetting that at least I'm not outside doing drugs. Okay. But I couldn't put the damn thing down. And the same thing happened with the drawing of the three as part of the Dark Tower series, where it ended, and it was to be continued thing, but I'm like, I have to wait for the third one? Son of a bitch. But the Dark Half, even though it had a satisfying conclusion, I wanted to explore that whole concept of a alter ego suddenly becoming sentient itself and wreaking havoc in the life of a writer, because just the concept itself was mind-boggling to me, just exploring something like that. And I was only 16 when this came out, so
That is, I understand. Jodi, what about you? What was your first?
I would probably still go with Stephen King. I was really drawn into Kari. I was fascinated with like mind control, the whole telekinesis. I was young, but it like was so fascinating, and I just wasn't happy with how it ended. There needed to be so much more. Like I could think now, almost 50 years old, like what, you know what I'm saying? Like there could have been like a whole nother, but again, he was drugging and drinking a lot, and all the things, but I just think there still could have been more build on it before it ended. And I was so sad when I got to that last page. I was like, okay, but there could have been so much more. But then I started delving into a lot of his other books. So then,
That I definitely understand. What about you, Kari?
I'm with you. Onwards and upwards. And why did it end? And so the Chronicles of Narnia, I was 5. And so then I just started reading them again, because that's what you do when you're like, okay, I have these books. I will read them. I will read them again. I will read them again. Oh, now I can go to the library. I will read a bunch of things there. And then when I get home and I eventually get down to my bookcase, I will read those again. I read my original Chronicles of Narnia so many times they were falling apart. It was just crazy.
I did that with the whole Anna Green Gables series. Like they had to buy me a new collection because like there was no putting the book back together. It was, I read them just religiously, but I was little and I kind of could relate to Anne, the whole, displaced thing. And it was just kind of cool. I was Anna Green Gables, guys.
Dude, yes. That was always beautiful. Okay. What is your favorite dessert? Kari.
Pretty much anything with a lot of chocolate. I am all about the chocolate cake with chocolate mousse covered with chocolate ganache, maybe a little scoop of vanilla ice cream on the side or coffee ice cream. Vanilla does clear it up a little bit better, and then a cup of coffee. That's going to be my favorite dessert. But it has to be rich chocolate, not just kind of chocolate.
Definitely, I agree. Now I want some. And what about you, James?
Strawberry cheesecake.
Y'all making me hungry.
Mm.
And you, Jodi?
His friend's mom makes the best cheesecake in the world.
Yes.
Hot
I believe
cherry pie a la mode is my favorite.
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
That is. I remember being in a cafe in Fremont and overhearing somebody saying, I don't know what this a la mode means, but I like ice cream with my pie. That's going in a story sometime. That's all I can say.
Papa loved ice cream on his pie, and Mom had brought him home some. We'd always go to Free Pie Wednesdays at Village Inn with Papa, and he'd get a piece. We'd get the pie to go, and then he'd be sitting there while we were finishing it. Well, do we have to take it home? Can't I just eat it here? So he'd eat the piece of pie out of that, or we'd get him another piece, and he'd get it home. And Mom was like, "Well, would you like a slice of apple pie?" And he was like, "Well, yeah. Do we have any ice cream?" Mom looked, and she's like, "No, we don't have any ice cream. We have some ice cream bars." "What kind?" "Chocolate with vanilla ice cream." "Well, that'll do just as good, won't it?" So Papa's eating hot apple pie with an ice cream bar broken up over it.
Hey,
Worked
it
just
works.
fine.
Another favorite of mine, because I don't know, I'm a lover of Bavarian cream. A lot of people don't really care for it because it's not a real rich cream. It's more of a decadent buttery cream. But I was 7 years old, and the neighbors next door, the dad delivered from Murray Cookies, and they delivered the pies too. And I got to taste the Boston cream pie, and I was like hooked. The chocolate and the Bavarian, and I'm like, okay.
So,
Nice.
the next question is coffee, tea, or something else? Jodi.
That's a tough question. And you'd pick me first. You're grounded. Okay. So when I'm not feeling well, a nice, hot, steaming chamomile with raw honey is like my go-to. But I am addicted to coffee, and the darker the blend, the happier Jodi is. And I argued with my doctor because he said I needed to put more water in my diet. Well, my argument being, but coffee has water in it, sir.
It's goth water.
Yeah. And he's like, that's not what I meant. And I'm like, well, it's what I meant.
What about you, James?
Well, I believe the proper answer to this is Deadly Grounds Coffee, the proud sponsor of the Owl Light Network. But no, if I don't have any of that around, I usually go for the Fountain Mountain Dew Zero with exactly 3 splashes of the strawberry flavoring that they have at the gas station.
I never
That's
thought
yummy.
of putting that in.
It's juicy.
I'll have to try it.
Oh yeah.
You want to. Okay, what about you, Kari?
If you could see my side table right now, it's a little cluttered. Otherwise, I would have 3 beverages on here, and those would be iced coffee, Coke Zero, and usually there is also an iced tea here. So I am all 3. I do drink hot coffee as well. I just am too lazy to make it very often. but went out for brekkie this morning and had some hot coffee. And yeah, so I do coffee, tea, and soda, Coke Zero to be specific.
Sweet or unsweet?
And then unsweet. I cannot do sweet tea. It's
Same.
just, if you didn't grow
We're not
up
in
with
the
it,
South.
I think you can't get it. Yeah, I think it's something you have to have developed the flavor taste for, you know? I tried it really hard and was just like, nah, this is not for me. I'm a lemon in my tea person too.
Yeah.
Okay, but when it comes to iced teas, there's oh, hold on, I gotta look up. Harney and Sons make this wonderful black currant tea that you can order by the small bags or big bags. And they do some interesting stuff. They serve it at Biaggi's. It's what they use to make their iced tea with. So Mom and I will go and order a big bag of Harney and Sons tea and of that flavor, and then make like regular iced tea and then pour in, I have like the huge Arizona iced tea jug that I buy every now and then just to make the rest of my iced teas in. And so I'll throw in a couple of cold brew bags of that and a couple of bags of the Harney and Sons ones. You want to take them out after it's done brewing, because to be ecologically correct, they make their tea bags out of a sugarcane base. So they will eventually get slimy if you leave them in there for a couple of days. It's just sugar, but it's still kind of odd. But leave them in there until it's brewed, and it is wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful.
Sounds delicious.
I do like currant, but it is a pity that it's not easy to get here in the States. I've had imported currant wine, which was amazing. I'm not a big drinker, but this, I could, watch myself around.
I'll send you a link to the Harney and Son stuff. It's really good.
Okay.
Can you post in the comments?
Yeah, let me.
It sounds
I
really
actually
good.
I get it on. I ordered it on Amazon, so I'll just get the Amazon link to it.
They'll rock.
To their shop.
Second to last question. Where do you like to write the most?
You said where?
Yeah. Comfy spot on your couch, the coffee shop, the Burger King down the street because it has Wi-Fi.
Me, whenever it starts flowing in my brain, I don't care if it's back on the back of an envelope, a receipt, like I start jotting, and then when I get home is actually my most comfortable because that's my safe space. Nobody can get me here, kind of thing. I go off of what thoughts had popped into my head and I build from there.
Okay. What about you, James?
Well, there are about two places that I find myself really inspired to write at. First is my pub in Omaha, the Shano Casey's. Give them a shout out. Several stories were either conceived there, written, or finished at that place. And also, right now, there's also a retro, like train car style diner from the 1940s in Fremont called Mel's Diner, which I find, as I was explaining to a friend of mine, I was having lunch there. It's just I like to. It has the perfect ambience. It has the crappy coffee that's drinkable, but has that, and a lot of the clientele is, putting it nicely, very colorful. Which means that even if I'm there just sitting and listening to the din of conversations going on, there's something there that I could just jot down and use in a story someplace. But The one that I'm finishing up, I wrote several pages longhand. I like to do it longhand at first simply because it slows my brain down, gives me a chance to really focus on what I really want to say. And that's how I was originally brought up to write, is on notebook paper and a pencil. So, yeah, just drinking coffee, having a nice greasy, omelet from there, and just listening, people watching, kind of, and just writing down my brain droppings as they come.
I like that word, brain droppings.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Kari?
This corner of my apartment is where I've been here for 21 years almost now. So yeah, a huge chunk of my life I lived in this building. And I don't really go many other places. The other place that I feel at home is at my mother's house, because during the time that my grandparents stayed with her for about 10, 11 years, I halfway lived at her house most of the time. I was there every day during the week, a lot of the nights, and then some of the weekends, because I was helping take care of my grandparents. And so I just spent all my time there. And I used to have it set up so that I had laptops synced to each other in each place and everything. And then I've just gotten to where I just take the one with me. Because I upgraded in laptops and didn't want to, upgrade twice. But I'm very comfortable there because I spent so much time, and I can sit out on the deck for a while with the pup and then go and sit in the nice room and type. I have a desk all up there. So those are my two safe places. I'm not good being out in public. I get too distracted too easily.
Understandable. Okay, guys, we've reached the 1.5 hour mark. I would like to thank everybody for coming and listening to this amazing interview. I know I have enjoyed every single nanosecond of it. Where do you want people to find you, Jodi?
You can find me on Facebook under Jodi May, just like the month. Yep, that's me. You can also find me on Facebook in Nail the Rainbow. That is my small business. You can find me on TikTok under Rebel Angel 66, and you can find me on YouTube, which I'm working on some plans. Jenny and I got a couple things going, just bouncing off each other to get my channel back up for a while. Jodi's Odyssey Corner, but there's some nifty stuff still in there from years before, and the babies were little.
And they still enjoy it. The tiniest one does. What about you, James?
Well, when I'm wanting to be found, I am dwelling inside a farmhouse in eastern Nebraska. But online, I have a small handful of blogs, of which I write music and movie reviews. And aside from the Tomb of the Terrible, also on the Owlite Network, I also have the Movies and Beer podcast, in which me and my friends watch normal movies, whatever they are, and talk about them. And, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I refuse to call it what it's called now.
I know.
So,
Okay, tell us about tomorrow's episode.
tomorrow's episode, by Freak of Nature, will be Sleepaway Camp 2. It's a freak of nature because last week we did the original Sleepaway Camp. It was on the wheel, and it landed on Sleepaway Camp 2, which means brace yourself, maybe wear a cup. We're going in. We're doing this.
Your face when I said that I added it to the wheel was priceless. And then when it landed on it.
Yeah, did anybody get a screenshot of that?
I can.
We should use that sometime. I don't know.
I think that's kind of epic how that happened, though.
Oh,
And
yeah.
what are the odds? For real.
I think it was 1 in 10, but
Right. I always
What
watch the
about you?
replays.
Oh, yeah. Where would you like us to find you, Kari?
okay, if you here, that's my author page on Facebook. If you eliminate the Leigh, I can't do it. Cross that out. Kari Sanders, if you see this, that is me. And that's my main Facebook page. All of my links are there to all of my different things on both the Owlite Network, well, not on just both, on the Owlite Network, as well as my author stuff, as well as my Splash Pages stuff, which is another show that I do. We do every Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern instead of 9, so I always get confused on that. This week we're going to have Russ Braun on, and that's going to be really awesome. So, yeah, just find me on Facebook, and half of the things that you're going to see if you try to contact me are going to end up being answered by this lovely woman right here. But she will let me know, and I will get to you. Or she will, and pretend to be me. She's really good at it.
If you're a troll, I'm not even going to say something. You're going to find out actually what I have to say.
True story.
But either way.
I tried doing it once. Didn't end very nicely. Hello, I am Kari. What do you need?
Jenny also answers my small business stuff because I ain't got time to deal with all that pettiness.
Oh, yeah, I can tell them where to go, how to find what nails that would go great with their makeup. Right. Even the makeup to go with the nails. But anyway, let's get back to the
original the world ever gave me.
Okay, first, we need to add the Owlite Menagerie. Please check out this book. We have the authors earlier: Rob, Curtis, Steve, us, Raz T. Slasher, Serena Mossgraves. So many things. And yes, you want to go meet the angel. You have to find the angel in the book. Go find the angel, love the angel, and tell us what you think about him and what he ends up doing. And
we're talking about my stories. Okay.
Well, yeah.
Yes, we are.
I thought somebody had an illustration of an angel in the book somewhere, like a Where's Waldo kind of game. And then I realized, oh, right, my story. Okay. Skip.
What I'm talking about. Or they could go find the video game simulation and find out why I enjoyed that story so much and have read it listen to it. You can go listen to it on our page. Anyway, for the first year, all the proceeds go to Pro Literacy Foundation. They're amazing. They help give people the tools to read. Every adult has the right to literacy, and with those tools that they give them, they can build a better life and become more successful. Please, if all else fails, go give them a donation. Okay, and then on my next show, Corpse Garden Chronicles, we get to meet Mr. Smith, Paul Smith, who runs our local, as in the town I live in, funeral home. All our family. We have been with this man so long, people are telling me stories about his dad. Okay, so when our family has known him so long, that I'm just like, I wonder if he'll just come on the show. And he said yes. So on Wednesday, we get to find out and ask questions to our local mortician and find out things that we didn't know, get things clarified, and just have an amazing interview with a wonderful man who takes care of our community in the hardest times. on Corpse Garden Chronicles Wednesday. So please come back and join us. I may or may not get the joy of any of these beautiful people with me because I know Kari has questions. Hopefully she'll come ask them. So if you would like to find me anywhere, I'll Light, Baycore, Friday with Library in the Blue Box, or if you actually want to see my author stuff, Jennifer Elliott author page. Thank you all for coming to see us, and I would like to thank you, Kari, James, and Jodi for being here. We have a whole lot of J names, 3 J names.
Jay's rock.
I'm a K. I'm right after you.
Yes.
Yes.
Y-
So, bye.
Look, you're secretly a J, Kari.
Bye.
Greetings and shabibans. We are the Retro Reductibus Cephala Podcast, a long-form bi-weekly show that celebrates all the things that made growing up awesome.
Well, that sounds good, but I don't know what all those words mean.
I think what Parasite Steve's trying to say is that on Retro Redoctopus, we explore a range of retro goodness, from toys, video games, and movies, to cartoons, and even snacks and school lunches.
Oh.
And we do it all with a positive spin, a slew of killer guests, and some very adult language.
And you know what else is cool?
No.
This crazy show is part of the Your King Podcast Network with new episodes every Tentacle Tuesday.
What's that?
And if waiting 2 weeks for a new episode gives you a sad, know that we drop bonus episodes all the time, like the off-format Crow's Nest and an interview series we call The Brig.
You can listen to Retro Redoctopus on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any app that's cool enough to carry the only show that celebrates all the things that make growing up awesome.